Elias had always known he was different, though he'd spent years burying that truth beneath bravado and half-smiles. Growing up in a small Ohio town, where church sermons preached love but whispered judgment, he'd learned to keep his heart locked tight. 16. He'd kissed a boy named Jamie behind the bleachers. A fleeting moment of fire that ended in fists when Jamie's brother caught them. The memory still stung, a scar on his soul. But it was also the spark that kept him searching for something real. Now, in Brooklyn, he was a barista by day, a dreamer by night, sketching cityscapes in a worn notebook he carried everywhere. The diner, Mel's all-night glow, was his sanctuary, a place where the coffee was cheap. The jukebox played Springsteen, and no one asked questions. That's where he first saw Noah Bennett. 2 weeks ago, sitting in a corner booth with a book and a shy smile that hit Elias like a freight train. Noah, 25, was everything Elias wasn't: soft-spoken, poised, with blonde hair that caught the diner's neon light like a halo. He was a music teacher at a local high school, his days filled with coaxing melodies from kids who'd rather be anywhere else. But it was his eyes, hazel, warm, and impossibly kind, that made Elias falter. They'd exchanged glances, then small talk, then numbers, each moment a tentative step toward something neither could name. Tonight, Elias waited outside the diner, rain soaking his jacket, his sketchbook tucked under his arm. Noah had texted, "Meet me at Mel's. EP. I need to tell you something." The words felt like a promise and a threat. Elias's pulse raced as he pictured Noah's smile. But doubt gnawed at him. What if Noah was like Jamie, another fleeting spark that would burn out in pain? The diner door swung open, and there he was. Noah's blue sweater clung to him, damp from the rain, his expression a mix of nerves and resolve. "Elias," he said, voice barely audible over the city's hum. "I'm glad you came." They stood there, inches apart, the world fading to a blur. Elias wanted to speak, to spill every fear and hope, but his throat tightened. Noah's hand brushed his, a fleeting touch that sent sparks through his veins. "I've never done this before," Noah whispered, his breath visible in the cold air. "But I can't stop thinking about you." Elias's heart stuttered. He'd spent years running from himself, from the truth he'd buried in Ohio. But Noah's words were a lifeline, pulling him toward a shore he'd never dared imagine. "Me neither," he managed, voice raw. "But I'm scared as hell." They stepped into the diner, the warmth wrapping around them like a promise. Over coffee and a shared plate of fries, Noah confessed his own struggles growing up in a strict Boston family, hiding his truth to keep the peace, teaching kids to chase their dreams while he buried his own. Elias listened, his sketches forgotten, his walls crumbling with every word. By the time they left, the rain had stopped, and the city felt alive again. Noah's hand found Elias's, their fingers intertwining as they walked toward the subway. It was a small act, but to Elias, it was a revolution. For the first time, he felt seen, not as the boy who'd fled Ohio, but as the man he was becoming. The next week was a whirlwind. Elias and Noah met daily, stealing moments between Elias's shifts and Noah's classes. They wandered Brooklyn streets, shared stories under the glow of fairy lights in Prospect Park, and kissed in the shadows of a graffiti-covered alley. Each touch was a defiance of the voices in Elias's head, his father's sermons, Jamie's betrayal, the fear that love like this could only end in ruin. But the past wasn't done with them. One evening, as they sat in Noah's tiny apartment, a knock at the door shattered their fragile peace. It was Noah's older brother, Caleb, a stern man with a military haircut and a scowl that made Elias's stomach twist. Caleb had driven from Boston unannounced, his eyes narrowing as he took in Elias's presence. "You didn't tell me you had company," Caleb said, his voice dripping with suspicion. Noah's face paled, but he stood his ground. "Elias is my friend," he said, the word heavy with unspoken truth. Caleb's gaze flicked between them, and Elias felt the weight of judgment, as familiar as it was crushing. After Caleb left, Noah sank onto the couch, his hands trembling. "He's always been like this," he said. "Watching. Judging. I thought I'd escaped that when I moved here." Elias sat beside him, their shoulders touching, a silent promise that he wasn't alone. But inside, Elias's own demons stirred. What if Caleb was right? What if they were fooling themselves, chasing a dream that would collapse under the world's weight? The next day, Elias found a letter slipped under his apartment door. It was from Jamie, his high school love, now living in New York. "I heard you're in Brooklyn. I need to see you. I'm sorry for what happened." The words hit like a punch, dragging Elias back to that night behind the bleachers, the pain and shame that had followed. He wanted to burn the letter, but curiosity and something deeper kept him from letting go. He met Jamie at a coffee shop in Williamsburg, his heart a tangle of old wounds and new fears. Jamie was different now, older, softer, his eyes carrying the weight of regret. "I was scared back then," Jamie said, voice low. "I hurt you, and I've hated myself for it ever since." Elias listened, torn between forgiveness and the need to protect the fragile hope he'd found with Noah. When he told Noah about the meeting, the air between them grew heavy. "Do you still love him?" Noah asked, his voice barely a whisper. Elias shook his head, but the doubt in Noah's eyes mirrored his own. They stood in silence, the city's noise a stark contrast to the storm brewing between them. Elias couldn't sleep that night, his mind replaying Noah's question. Did he still love Jamie? No. But the past had a way of clawing at the present, and Elias felt its grip tightening. He sketched furiously, filling pages with images of Noah, his smile, his hands, the way he looked at Elias like he was enough. But the sketches couldn't silence the fear that he wasn't. Noah, too, was wrestling with his own doubts. At school, he overheard whispers from colleagues, rumors sparked by Caleb's visit. Is Noah seeing someone? A guy? The words were casual, but they cut deep, reminding him of the life he'd left behind in Boston, a life where love was a secret to be buried. He wanted to be brave, to live openly with Elias, but the fear of losing his job, his family, his place in the world loomed large. They met at Mel's again, the diner a constant in their shifting world. Over coffee, Elias confessed about Jamie's letter, his voice trembling. "I don't want him," he said. "But he's a reminder of everything I'm afraid of losing you. Losing myself." Noah reached across the table, his hand steadying Elias's. "I'm scared too," he admitted. "But I'd rather face that fear with you than alone." Their honesty was a turning point, a fragile bridge over the chasm of doubt. They spent the night talking, unraveling their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Elias spoke of his father's disapproval, the sermons that branded love like there's a sin. Noah shared stories of his mother's silence, her refusal to acknowledge the son he truly was. Together, they began to see their pain not as a barrier, but as a shared strength. But the world wasn't done testing them. The school. Noah's principal called him in, her face stern. A parent had complained, citing concerns about Noah's lifestyle. The word stung, reducing his truth to a problem to be solved. Noah stood tall, his voice steady, but inside, he was breaking. He didn't tell Elias. Not yet. Afraid of adding weight to their already fragile bond. The tension built like a storm. Elias sensed Noah's distance. The way his smiles didn't reach his eyes. He pushed, gently at first, then with desperation. "What's wrong?" he asked one night, as they sat on a bench overlooking the East River. Noah's silence was deafening, and when he finally spoke, his words were a confession. "They might fire me," he said, voice cracking. "Because of who I am. Because of us." Elias felt the world tilt. He'd known fear, but this was different, visceral. All-consuming dread that the life they were building could be torn apart. He pulled Noah close, their foreheads touching, and whispered, "We'll fight this. Together." But the words felt hollow against the weight of reality. The next day, Elias found himself back at Mel's, sketching Noah's face from memory. A stranger approached, a man in his 40s with kind eyes and a rainbow pin on his jacket. "You're Elias, right?" he said. "I'm Tom, a friend of Noah's. He told me about you." Tom was a lawyer, part of a local LGBTQ advocacy group, and he offered to help Noah fight the school's discrimination. For the first time, Elias felt a flicker of hope, not just for them, but for a future where they could exist without fear. Noah, meanwhile, was preparing for a meeting with the school board. He spent hours drafting a statement, his words a blend of defiance and vulnerability. "I'm a teacher," he wrote, "but I'm also a man who loves, who dreams, who deserves to live as I am." The night before the meeting, he shared the statement with Elias, his hands shaking. Elias read it, tears blurring his vision, and pulled Noah into a kiss that said everything words couldn't. The school board meeting was a battlefield. Noah stood before a room of strangers, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. He spoke of his dedication to his students, his passion for music, and his right to love without shame. Elias sat in the back, his heart pounding, every word from Noah a testament to the man he'd come to love. The board's response was mixed, some sympathetic, others cold. A decision would take weeks, leaving Noah in limbo. But as he left the room, Elias was there, his presence a reminder that they weren't alone. Tom, the lawyer, was already working on a case, gathering support from parents and students who admired Noah's courage. Back at Noah's apartment, they collapsed onto the couch, exhausted but unbroken. Elias pulled out his sketchbook, showing Noah a drawing of them together, hands entwined, the city skyline behind them. "This is us," he said. "No matter what happens." Noah smiled, a real smile this time, and kissed him softly. "I'm not giving up," he said. "Not on you." Not on us. Their bond deepened, forged in the fire of adversity. They spent nights planning, dreaming, and loving, each moment a rebellion against the world's judgment. Elias started attending support groups with Tom, finding a community that understood his fears and celebrated his truth. Noah began incorporating lessons on acceptance into his classes. Small acts of defiance that rippled through his students' lives. Weeks later, the school board ruled in Noah's favor, citing anti-discrimination laws and community support. It was a victory, but not without cost. Whispers persisted, and Noah knew some colleagues would never look at him the same. Still, he felt lighter, as if a weight he'd carried his whole life had begun to lift. Elias, too, was changing. He showed his sketches at a local gallery, his art a raw, honest reflection of his journey. The centerpiece was a portrait of Noah, titled Harmonized Hearts, a tribute to the man who'd helped him find his voice. The gallery opening was a triumph, with Noah by his side, their hands clasped openly, defiantly. But the past wasn't done with them. Jamie reappeared, this time at the gallery, his eyes filled with a mix of pride and pain. "You've changed," he told Elias. "You're not the scared kid I knew." Elias nodded, his heart steady. "I had to," he said. "For me. For him." Jamie left with a quiet apology. A chapter finally closed. That night, Elias and Noah stood on a rooftop, the city sprawling beneath them. "I love you," Elias said, the words spilling out like a vow. Noah's eyes shimmered with tears as he replied, "I love you too." They kissed, the city's lights a witness to their truth, their love a melody that refused to be silenced. With the school board victory behind them, Elias and Noah began to build a life together. They moved into a small apartment in Park Slope, its walls soon covered with Elias's sketches and Noah's sheet music. They hosted dinners for friends, their home a haven for those who, like them, had fought to be seen. Elias's art career grew, his work catching the eye of a local curator who offered him a solo show. Noah, meanwhile, started a music program for at-risk youth, using his experience to teach kids the power of self-expression. Their lives were far from perfect. Money was tight. Doubts lingered, but they faced each challenge together, their love a constant in the chaos. One evening, as they walked through Brooklyn Bridge Park, Noah pulled Elias to a stop. "I want to do this forever," he said, his voice trembling with certainty. Elias grinned, pulling him close. "Then let's make it official." The proposal wasn't planned, but it was perfect, a promise sealed under the stars. They began planning a wedding, small and intimate, surrounded by the community they'd built. Tom offered to officiate, his rainbow pin gleaming as he joked about being their fairy godlawyer. The planning was a whirlwind of joy and nerves, each decision a step toward a future they'd once thought impossible. The wedding was held in a small garden in Brooklyn, fairy lights twinkling against the summer sky. Elias wore a simple suit, his sketchbook tucked into his pocket, a reminder of the journey that had brought him here. Noah, in a soft gray blazer, carried a single sheet of musica composition he'd written for Elias, titled The Ballad of Us. As they exchanged vows, their voices broke with emotion. Elias promised to draw Noah's smile every day, to fight for their love no matter the cost. Noah vowed to be Elias's harmony, to face every storm by his side. The crowd, friends, family, even a few of Noah's students cheered as they kissed. Their love a beacon in a world still learning to accept. The reception was a blur of laughter, music, and dancing. Elias's father, who'd flown in from Ohio, stood quietly in the corner, his expression unreadable. Later, he approached Elias, his voice gruff. "I don't understand everything," he said, "but I see you're happy. That's enough." It wasn't absolution, but it was a start, a crack in the wall between them. As the night wound down, Elias and Noah slipped away to the garden's edge, their hands entwined. They looked out at the city, its lights a tapestry of stories like theirs. "We did it," Noah whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Elias nodded, his heart full. "And we're just getting started." Their story wasn't over. There would be more battles, more doubts, more moments of fear. But as they stood together, the ballad of their love played on, a melody of pain, courage, and self-discovery that would echo through their lives. They were two hearts, harmonized, ready to face whatever came next.